Welcome to Write in the Pickle Barrel, a writer's journey. Hello, and welcome to Season 3 of Write in the Pickle Barrel. My name is Eric.
And I'm Justin.
And this season, we are getting into a bunch of new things that we haven't really talked. Actually, we haven't talked about at all so far on the last two seasons. So this will be really interesting. Today's episode specifically, as we're going to be kind of diving into this whole new, it's really this whole new genre of writing, or this whole new phase of writing, and not just writing, but really artwork, movie making, editing, all that stuff. And that is incorporating artificial intelligence into writing. This is something that's been a really big deal over the last couple of years. In fact, I know that as a filmmaker, there are a lot of people really complaining about how script writers are going to start losing their jobs because production companies are going to start using artificial intelligence to write stories. There are obviously a number of people thinking they're going to lose their work as artificial intelligence comes in and starts making cars and, building various objects or whatever that many of our factories around the United States use and around the world. So really, AI is just one of those things that have just kind of developed overnight. I should say developed as in grew overnight, because AI has been in development for a very long time. But just within the last year, we went from this is AI and it was really sketchy and horrible. Within a year, it's creating masterpieces of artwork and writing and music and things like that. And there's a lot of debate as to whether or not AI is substantial and will help us as artists to progress our storytelling, or if it's going to take our jobs away and do the work for us, which will leave many of us just out of work and trying to scramble for money. But with all that said, we do want to talk a little bit about ChatGPT. That's what today's episode is going to be about. We're going to discuss how ChatGPT works, whether it's going to be beneficial to us, whether it's going to be of maybe it's going to mess with our careers and take over. We'll figure that all out. But Justin, you wanted to talk about ChatGPT because this is something you've been talking to me about for a little while now. Have you actually have experience with ChatGPT? Have you used it?
Yeah, so as just to see what it would do for these past couple competitions, I typed in what my prompts were, how long it should be, and kind of just gave it just a couple of parameters, and it came out with some pretty interesting stories. Now, granted, there's probably a lot of emotion that could have been put into these stories compared to what the AI did, but they were really good, at least really good ideas. And I just sent you today a couple of scripts for a new show idea that we're working on for the intro. So I've interacted with it. I created a script for my job at Dakota Media Access, just to have podcasters and producers record a commercial for the podcasts that we run on our station. And I had to combine two separate scripts because one had really good aspects to it, and then the one that my boss did with ChatGPT, that had some really good aspects to it. So we kind of combined, tweaked it a little bit, and made it our own.
Mm. So I guess the biggest question is, starting right off the bat, is whether or not it's actually okay to use AI to write a story while still putting your name on it as the author.
Right. And, this technology is brand new. I know that the local community college has used it for scripts for their drama classes and performances, just because it's not copyrighted material, because as of right now, there are no laws that state that AI has any intellectual property to these scripts, because technically speaking, they're not alive. Now, we've all seen the Terminator, the Matrix, blah, blah, blah. That's a whole other can of worms. We're not going to get into that part. But it really goes down to ethics, though, too. You and I have had this conversation through text already, just, as far as is it even really a great idea to use stories that are written by AI? Something I can tell you, I've tried to have ChatGPT write an entire novel. It told me it can't do that. I don't know if it's because I'm not paying the fees for it or what, but it has written short stories. It also wrote out a very decent start to an outline for a book. So something that I would say is absolutely a great idea is to maybe utilize it to write your outlines. That's not to say you probably won't have to make any corrections. It's AI. It doesn't know exactly what you're wanting, but it is a tool. We'll say that.
Okay. Yeah. One thing when it comes to the laws, I mean, there are clearly no laws prohibiting anyone from using AI generated stories or AI anything really, but there has been a lot of controversial statements and arguments that AI is indeed a problem because it is basically how AI works. You don't just create AI and let it do its own thing. You have to feed it information in order for it to learn.
Right.
And so the people who've created the AI or certain apps or AI, whatever, whether it's a website or an app or some other thing, these people who are creating them are feeding them things such as Taylor Swift music, like AI, write me a song about blah, blah, blah. That sounds like Taylor Swift or whatever. And it uses language that she would use. It's done the same thing for authors, where it's using language in which authors would normally use in their own personal style of writing. And authors, musicians, etc., are becoming very angry with that because they're taking away from their properties something that makes them or unique in their art, and is being stolen because technically it is. And they can't sue easily the people who built the system because the system itself is operating on its own platform.
Right.
It's not the people telling it to create this, generate these stories or these songs using that particular language. So there is a lot of controversy there. And, it's a big thing where many people, many artists, especially writers, musicians, etc., are trying to discredit and get rid of AI so that it doesn't take over everybody else's job or create some sort of copyright infringement, which it really does do when you consider styles and various stories in which it comes out. Like I remember somebody tried feeding AI. This is 2 years ago now, so it's old, but tried feeding him a story about Batman. I think they put in the Dark Knight story and wanted it to recreate this Batman story, the Dark Knight story, and it was a mess. It was hilarious. It was all screwed up. But that was 2 years ago. Today, it could pretty much create a pretty awesome story on its own.
Right.
Now, one of the big things, though, when it comes to AI, it's great. I think AI can be, like you said, very much used as a tool in our writing to help us along. But if you're somebody who uses AI, you said you tried to see if it could write you a novel. Maybe it can. But if we as authors or writers, used AI to write a novel, can that actually discredit us as an author? Because, my concern is, as an author, you should have a certain style. It should be of your time, your energy, your soul should be poured into these things, basically. So if you're just typing in a couple words and letting the work, letting artificial intelligence create the story for you, are you really an author, or are you just somebody who's getting by and trying to make money by using something else that's doing all the work for you?
Well, here's the one thing where you aren't going to really run into ethics or be discredited is if you label it as an AI generated novel or set of short stories, just by using your ideas. So Yes and no. If you're using it for a full story and you're slapping your name on it, yeah, if somebody found out, absolutely you could be discredited.
Right.
And your ethics will be pulled into account. But go ahead.
No, well, I was going to say, because I had asked you this via text. I don't know if it was last week or the week before. Dude, all my weeks just blend together anymore. I don't know.
It was a couple
what day
weeks
it is.
ago. Yeah.
But you had said that you were thinking of creating a book that was fully generated by AI and mentioning that. But if you're an author who does that, or someone who does that, and then you decide to release your own book under your own name that isn't generated by AI, do you think, people will see, oh, well, they created AI. How do we know that they didn't just use the AI for this story as well? Like,
that's
how
true.
do you credit the author at that point? Because they've got to swing one way or the other, in my opinion, but to each their own, I suppose.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if so long as you label the book, then I mean, yes, I agree with you that if you do it once, they're going to be like, well, did he do it again?
Right.
He didn't credit it this time. So he's just using AI and saying it's himself now. I absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm just trying to give examples as to the way it could, like, if that was the only book you ever did,
right,
is by doing AI generated stories, then yeah, no, it's not going to be an issue. But if you're writing your own books and then you say, oh yeah, this one is a book created by AI with my prompts, and then you go and try and publish something else, I can see how that would be an issue. For sure.
Could you imagine the confusion if you publish a book created by AI and then you publish a book about AI creating AI? Like,
here we go down the rabbit hole. AI is one of those controversial things right now that people, they're split 3 different ways. Either they hate using it. They think it's just a great tool. You shouldn't be doing anything other than using it as just a tool. And there are those people that are creating beautiful works of art in relation to AI. So they'll have it generate something and then add their spin on top of it.
Right. Well, take this as an example, and this isn't story based, but this is actual artwork. For many, many years, most of us have been using Photoshop, right? Adobe Photoshop. We take photos, you put it in there, and you can manipulate the photo however you want. You can add a whole new sky. You could add people, take people away, et cetera, et cetera. It could take hours to do that sometimes for depending on how elaborate you want to make it. Nowadays, all you need is a cell phone. You take a picture of a field, and then you use AI. Type in what you want, like a castle, unicorn flying through the sky, rainbows, hit enter, and you have your field, but this time with all this other stuff added, right? Just within a couple of seconds. And then people are posting it like, look at my art. It's like, but is it your art? Like throwing in a couple words. Like you and I have messed with AI art a lot, especially for our last podcast for our thumbnails, which was really cool. It's a lot of fun to use. But I think there's a whole lot of discredit there because anybody could come up with a couple of words and make a story, but can you actually create the art yourself? Like at what point are you no longer the artist, and just, I don't even know what you would be, just producing stuff that AI does for you, I guess. I don't even know.
Well, that's where the huge disconnect though is too. Like if you're trying and find something where you're not using copyrighted pictures or whatever from stuff you find on the web for thumbnails for a podcast, that's one thing. If you're generating this art and then calling it your own, just like we're talking about with the writing, same difference. Yeah. You're going to be discredited whether you're a writer, artist, musician, whatever, if you're using AI.
Yeah. So the next thing we actually want to talk about, because this is something, I mean, you just mentioned this at the beginning of our show here. You kind of used AI for your writing competitions just to kind of to play with it, see what it would come up with. And so the question is, could you, I suppose, use ChatGPT for writing competitions and still quote unquote legally participate in those competitions?
In one of the competitions, at least one of them that I saw, it did say that if we find out that this is not an original piece by you, you will be disqualified.
Mm-hmm.
That includes they had mentioned something about AI in it, I
Okay.
believe.
I was gonna say, because I see a lot of loopholes already in just that statement alone. But if they added AI in there,
I believe they had added if they found out that it was an AI generated story, you'd be disqualified.
Okay.
And if I'm completely mistaken, they need to,
Right.
just for because of the conversations we've had. And I was just joking around because I actually, after I had showed you what it did for me and was joking around with it, wrote a really great story.
Right.
So
Well, and I think, and that goes back to using AI as a tool. If you can let AI generate an idea, like this would be a great opportunity, I think, to use AI when we fall into those, those roadblocks when we're writing our
writer's
novels,
block,
right?
yeah.
When we just don't know what to do. Typing in the situation in AI might be able to help you push forward. Not necessarily use AI in its totality to, just copy and paste, but use it as a guide to kind of lead us into moving past those moments where we're stuck. And I think that's a great opportunity for you too, like using that at the beginning for your competition, so long as you're not actually using AI or what the AI creates, but like taking some ideas, and it's really not much different, I guess, than as a filmmaker. For me, like a lot of my ideas when it comes to things that I write, for example, come from other movies that I saw, or it comes from things that I've seen outside, or stuff that you and I have studied, based on more the paranormal, supernatural side of things, since I write a lot of horror stuff.
Right.
Same with like how a scene is set up. I'm finding pictures online that I really like, that has a certain type of lighting, and I want to light it just like that. You're supposed to take ideas and use them to the best of your own ability, make them your own. That's one thing. But when you're taking that idea and then just copy and pasting it, well, now it's no longer your piece, right? It's not original. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's something that a lot of writing competitions, and really any competition that is meant to be artist driven, should refrain from. They should not be like, no one should be using ChatGPT or any other sort of AI to generate these stories, unless there's a competition specifically for AI, in which whoever has the best ideas and can create the best story via AI,
Right. Yeah.
But
right. Well, let me ask you this, because I mentioned about the community college here doing scripts generated by AI, just so they didn't have to deal with copyright infringement, so they could actually do the play. Because we're talking mostly about short stories and stuff, so I kind of want to get your feel, since you're a script writer, about people using ChatGPT or any AI to write a script.
Well, I think as a independent filmmaker, somebody who maybe isn't making any money on the story, or who's maybe making very little, if you're the filmmaker, meaning you're producer, you're the director, you're multiple hats, right? But you have the lead, and you don't have the money to finance a script, and you yourself are not good at writing scripts or can't write a script, then maybe utilizing AI to do it would be good, like could be helpful, so long as I believe it's notified or mentioned within the script at the beginning, idea by Eric Skerback, written by Chat GPT. That's a good way around it, because the idea is still mine in that case. It's just not written by me, right? It's written by AI. However, when it comes to actually writing stories for like Hollywood, for example, that's a big thing right now. People are scared about AI coming in and taking over, because there are production companies that are utilizing AI to try to write new scripts instead of utilizing script writers or screenwriters. And so they're not, instead of paying a screenwriter to write the script that they want for free, they just jump into some AI system, write what they want, and then poof, they get a magic script. And now your writer's not getting paid because they're out of the job. AI is taking over, and you don't got to pay AI. And producers for the production company are holding more money, and so are the production companies. They're like, that's a big thing right now within Hollywood, is production companies aren't paying actors enough money. They're not paying crew enough money. That's why we had a writer's strike and a SAG-AFTRA strike, an actor strike. Both of them have not been being paid the way they should be getting paid, because these production companies are holding back. They're withholding money and keeping it for themselves, which is just, in a way, it's immoral, right? Like, you got people working hard, and when these production companies are just hogging all the money, and now they're trying to find ways around to, kind of beat out other writers and whatnot, it's going to be an issue, and there's going to be a lot of people losing their jobs eventually. I do think that's where it's going. I think there are going to be people losing their jobs, and I think it's going to be very hard to combat AI, because the simple fact is AI is getting really strong really fast. It's creating its own language that humanity can't even figure out, and this is something that you and I talked about, I think it was last year maybe.
Yeah.
Where AI is just, it created its own language, and we only know this because there were a couple of writing scientists, who like tested the AI to see whether, here's what happened. AI showed a picture, right? And then it labeled the picture in some gibberish. They didn't know what it meant. So then they asked the AI what it meant by showing it the picture, and then the AI wrote the gibberish again. So then the scientists wrote that same gibberish back to the AI to see what it would do, and the AI showed them the picture that they showed them, that they showed the AI. So it was basically saying, oh, that picture is this gibberish, and this gibberish means this picture. So it's creating its own language that other AI systems can understand, but humanity can't. So yeah, when you talk about the Terminator, Judgment Day, all that at the beginning of the show, it's scary, right? But yeah, AI is a huge thing, and it's only going to I think it's going to get way more powerful than what we have. And I do think writers of all kinds, artists of all kinds, are going to start losing their jobs and losing money because of it.
Well, we'll get into this before the break, but that's also thinking about, if humans would even purchase something that is generated by AI, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And I'm not going to lie. I think it depends on what it is that it's producing. But I'm not so far fetched to think that AI doesn't have a power within itself that can take over quite a bit of humanity, if not all of it, right? Like, and that's not just going by Judgment Day, all the movies and stuff. Like, a lot of that science fiction stuff is actually happening nowadays, right?
Right.
It's crazy. And so I'm not going to lie, and she's going to wake up here when I say it, but when I talk to Siri, for example, when I ask, like on an iPhone or an Apple, when I ask her to find me something and she does it and she gives me answers or whatever, I always say thank you. I try to be as polite as possible, because I don't want, when the AI systems take over and robots start coming, I want them to see me as they're destroying humanity and be like, I remember him. He always said thank you. He was pleasant. We'll let you live.
You'll be the only human left.
The only human. I will serve the AIs the rest of my life until I die and go to heaven. Like, or fight beside them. Like, So, but yeah.
All right. Well, this is a good point for us. We're gonna have a quick break, and we'll be right back right after this.
You are listening to Right in the Pickle Barrel, and today we are talking about ChatGPT and whether or not it can be utilized or should be utilized to write a story as an author, especially. So we've talked about whether or not it's actually okay to use AI to write a story, and whether or not there's any laws prohibiting AI from or using AI to generate your own stories and publishing it. And we've also talked about whether or not you can be discredited as an author by publishing stories generated by AI. Now, one thing that we do want to talk about, because we did say that I think we both think that AI is an awesome opportunity to use as a tool. And so you had talked about using ChatGPT as kind of a tool to spark your imagination and create a story for a writing competition.
Yep.
And now we want to kind of just get into a couple of ways in which you can best utilize ChatGPT for your own writing, whether you're a music writer, or a songwriter, whether you're an author, whether you're a screenwriter, whatever type of writing you do. These are some awesome ways that you can utilize that. uh, I keep wanting to say substance, but that's not the word. It might be a substance one day. It'd be the drug that nobody can get off of, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But
I mean, social media is kind of that way as it is
true.
right now. So
AI's already got us, you know?
yep.
But yeah, so a great way to utilize ChatGPT, and the first one, as you had already mentioned a little bit, is writing an outline for your story. Now, you said GPT had started an outline for your story, couldn't write the whole thing, but that's
Yeah, it
possibly
only
because
wrote like 4 or 5 chapters. But again,
okay,
I'm not paying for the service, so maybe that limits how much it can actually answer me
yeah. AI is probably like, I'm not getting paid for this. I just sit in this little bubble and think at the world of the web or whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, you can write an outline of your story, and of course, ultimately, at least not yet, if you were to use ChatGPT for anything, you're going to find quite a number of mistakes because there are just words in the human dictionary, and that is languages all around the world, not just English, in which the AI has yet to fully grasp or understand. So you have to be very, very specific when you're writing these things because AI tends to be very specific in return. In fact, so specific that it just doesn't make sense, especially if you're writing something like fantasy, right? So no matter what you do in this moment, if you use ChatGPT or any other sort of AI service to write an outline, you're still going to have to go through it, make sure it all aligns, make sure there's proper plot points in your character development, things like that. That's something that AI just can't do. They can't build character development. They can't build proper plot points and curves and all that stuff. So that is still work on your part to go in and double check the outline and make it your own.
Same thing for stories, though, too, or if you're doing song lyrics, whatever the case may be. And again, I'm not telling you to go use exactly what ChatGPT did for you or wrote for you. But if you're having a really hard time trying to, you're writing a story, for example, we'll just say, and you're like, yeah, it's just not vibing. And then you tell, we'll just say Chat GPT to write lyrics for you and whatever guidelines that you put in, and you read through and you finally find the lyric that you were trying to think of and use that. Yeah, I'm all for that. And it's one of those things that it's going to be rough to regulate how people use AI for stuff like that. But
yeah. Well, and I think like just using using AI to get through those type of writing blocks is just generally very beneficial because we all hit those writing blocks eventually. And typically AI likely isn't going to be able to tell you the whole chapter and still match it with what you've written previously because it doesn't know what you wrote previously. So that is, again, still something you got to kind of balance and figure out and see how you can match what's being written or figure out that,
Right.
But another cool thing is like you can actually get writing prompts from ChatGPT. Now, this is something you can easily do online. We've talked about this over the last 2 seasons.
Right.
You could just Google writing prompts and you'll get all kinds of various prompts that you can use to try to write your own stories, right? But if you want something fresh and you want a new way to go about it, then you can easily use ChatGPT for the same thing. Right. And you could just, you could probably just type in writing prompt, or you could type in writing prompt, drama, historical fiction, murder, something like that, right? And it can give you a writing prompt as to what exactly, which, I mean, if you just wrote that is a writing prompt. So you might as well just use that, right?
Yeah, right.
But,
well, I have tried to do that too. And you got to be a little more specific when you say writing prompt, because it gave me a sentence, kind of like what Readsy does for their word prompts. So if you're looking just for like 3 words, like a character, a object, and a place, make sure you're putting that into your prompts so that it knows this is what I need to generate.
Right. The last way really that you can utilize ChatGPT is simply for fun, just to like sit back, type in some of your own ideas and let ChatGPT come up with the stories for you and just read them, just enjoy them, maybe post them online for free or whatever on the web, on Facebook or whatever. because it is really fascinating. Like, you and I have messed with the art one AIs all the time.
Yeah.
And it's a blast to see what kind of stuff comes up. Like, I know I put one in, a picture of your dog, and I wrote like zombie or something, and it made your dog into a zombie. I was like, oh, this is pretty dope. Right. But yeah, I mean, it's a great way to just have fun and enjoy AI without potentially ruining your career, right? Or discrediting you as an artist.
Right. Well, and so I don't think I've ever asked you, have you messed with ChatGPT at all?
I have not. No.
Okay. I love the image ones. And I haven't tried to see if ChatGPT will do images very well, but for text, it's fun to read the stories that it comes up with, just because it's like, in a way, like the story that I wrote for the competition, I read through what ChatGPT said. I really didn't utilize anything in it, but it sparked ideas in myself of what I wanted to try and use.
Right.
And I absolutely loved the one story it came up with. Unfortunately, I can't give the prompts that I was given because that's part of the competition. But it's something that you can just have fun with for sure.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's about it. Unless you have any final words.
No, I mean, I'll say that this is probably pretty short episode, because really ChatGPT is relatively still new, and there's still a lot of things that, AI is trying to figure out and learn. And as we progress over the following months and years, there's going to be a whole new door opening for AI systems to really generate some crazy, incredible stories. And when that happens, we will be back to talk about those and just really, I think, come to some sort of conclusion as to whether or not it's good or bad, right? For the artists themselves. But I think AI right now is a great opportunity to really just fix our minds onto the stories that we ourselves want to write, right? To help us develop our story ideas, to help us move forward in writer's block and things like that. But whether or not it's really good for creating stories on their own, not quite there yet. Right? There's still a lot of work to be happening. There's still a lot of learning on AI's side before they can thoroughly tell a story the way that a human can write it. So for the time being, for all of our listeners, you're still on the job, right? You still got work, at least a couple more years. So start saving up for that day that AI takes over, and you're going to need it to keep living.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I completely forgot to mention that, I had listened to the script that the community college used, and it was freaking hilarious, just because I don't know if it was generated more recently or in the past. It almost felt like it was generated more when AI was kind of starting to come into its prime, if you will, even though it still is. And it was very poorly written. They didn't do any editing, just because they're like, this is an AI generated script. We're going to do it as it wrote it. And some of it is really hard to understand.
Right.
But the story that ChatGPT wrote for me was amazing. So I'm guessing the recording that I had seen was from at least a year or two ago.
Yeah.
But all right, folks, that's all we've got this week. Stay tuned. We've got a lot of great stuff coming for you. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Until then, keep your head in the clouds and your pen on paper.